Hi, my name is William Schaeffer with another book review, and today's book is The Second Messiah by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas. This book is about the Shroud of Turin, which has been an enigma for almost 1,000 years. Now, the authors are writing from within the context of Freemasonry and how the current practice of Freemasonry is related to these historical events. Nevertheless, the book is quite scholarly and very interesting. The book begins with a description of the Rosslyn Chapel near Edinburgh in Scotland. Apparently, the artwork in this chapel is a historical record of the secrets of Freemasonry and secrets that were inherited from the Knights Templar. The authors talk about the early years of Freemasonry and then start to talk about the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar first appeared with the First Crusade and in 1099 succeeded in capturing Jerusalem for the armies of Europe. Originally, there were 9 Templars, and they took a vow as a group that contained, among other things, a vow of chastity, a vow of abstinence, and a vow to hold all their money in common. Soon, the Templars became a vital force in Europe, and they became a precursor in some ways to the banking industry. They became very wealthy, and they alone were loaning money to kings and making money off of the transactions. Meanwhile, maintaining their austerity as a sect and as a religious or sacred order. The first leader of the Templars was Hugues de Payen, and he led the Templars to begin with. He was followed by a succession of Templars. Now it's rumored that they had dug up secrets in Jerusalem in the temple after they conquered Jerusalem. And this was how they got their wealth. And this might be related to what is now known as the Copper Scroll. A copy of the Copper Scroll was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls and contained the location where lots of buried treasure was located. Supposedly there was a copy of this buried in the temple also. Nevertheless, the Templars became very influential throughout Europe, and for the next 200 years were known as the liberators of Jerusalem, of the Crusades, and they became very wealthy and influential. And they elected a successive series of leaders over time. And by the time of the Shroud of Turin, we'll fast forward to the Shroud of Turin, the 10th leader was the head of the Knights Templar. The Shroud of Turin is interesting. It's been carbon dated to no earlier than 1000 or 1100 AD. So if the carbon dating is accurate, there's no way it could be the image of Jesus. A few interesting things about the Shroud. It first occurred in recorded history in 1357. And the entire time it has been in private hands. It is not a holy relic or an artifact of the church, but has remained in private hands the entire time. The next major event in this story is the end of the Templars. And on Friday, October 13th, 1307, the King of France, in a surprise move, arrested 1,500 of the Templars in France, and they were all burned at the stake. Now, it was because they were practicing sacrilege against the church was the excuse, but history has long thought it was because the king was broke and the Templars were wealthy and he took all their money. And that night, the leader of the Templars was burned at the stake with the rest of them, and apparently he cursed the king and the pope that they would not live out the year, and they both died within a year after that outrage. Now, this is a fact of history, but the authors have speculated, and they make a convincing physical, chemical argument that the image in the Shroud of Turin is the image of the 10th leader of the Templars, Jacques de Molay, who apparently was being groomed to be the second Messiah. And as such, he had taken the traditional Nazirene vow that Samson and supposedly Jesus took, to never cut their hair, to never drink wine, never eat grapes, and never wear linen. And that's the Nazirene vow. And that's why the image on the Shroud of Turin is the image of Jacques de Molay, who looks like he could be a Christ figure, because he was grooming to be announced as the second Messiah. Now, this is the theme of the book, and whether that conclusion is accurate or not, I leave for your evaluation. Nevertheless, the book is a fascinating and well-written excursion through historical events, and they do a good job of describing the history of the Templars, the history of the times, and the relation of the Shroud of Turin to the Church, the Templars, and the modern order of the Masons. Therefore, if you're interested in the history of the Knights Templar and some speculation on the origin of the Shroud of Turin, I highly recommend The Second Messiah by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas. Thank you, and leave your comments below.